Beatitudes are probably one of the most familiar discourses of Jesus' ministry. In them, Jesus carefully defines the character of the people whose lives are being lived in a way that pleases God. What Jesus talks about directly after he delivers the Beatitudes gives us a picture of what the world could be if his people would simply live out the principles that God has set forth. For them to be salt and light to the world, they must first humble themselves and then have an outward focus that does not succumb to selfish ambitions and ambitions. But this does raise some questions for us. How will we know if we are behaving in the right ways? Does the life of a Christian look like, what does that look like in practical terms? What are the ethical implications of living a Christian life? In this part of Jesus' sermon, Jesus is quite specific about the rules of conduct for Christians. And it is sure to make most of us more than just a little uncomfortable. One of the first things we learn as a child is there will be rules. Back when we were still in diapers, we learned very quickly there were no-nos. Isn't that true? In fact, many child psychologists tell us that no is one of the first 7 words we learn. It's one of the first words that we begin to understand the definition of. No is a word that establishes boundaries, keeps us safe, and hopefully prevents us from harming others. When we are a toddler, the rules are pretty simple, aren't they? We learn things like no biting, or don't hit your sister, or don't eat the dog food out of the bowl. Of course, you never did that, did you? Or don't pull the cat's tail. But, as we age, then, things tend to get more complicated. When a child goes off to elementary school and learns to read, the rules become more extensive, and they're often posted on walls and doors. And it doesn't take long for children to learn that there are expectations placed on them when it comes to following the rules. The older we get, the more we're expected to follow the rules, right? One thing, though, that we adults learn quickly when we start having kids is that a child will usually repeat what they hear. And children very seldom ever misquote us. You know that, right? They usually always repeat word for word what we shouldn't have said. And after, another concept that kids learn very quickly is that there are often loopholes and exceptions to the rules. For example, the rules imposed on them at home are not always enforced the same way when they go off to grandma's house. Isn't that true? They soon learn that no is a relative term and is conditional. For instance, if your daughter runs into the room and says, "Daddy, can I kill it?" how do you respond? Well, don't you first ask, what? Now, if she means that big spider that's crawling across the floor, the answer is probably yes. But if she means her little brother who just got into her stuff once again, the answer is probably going to be no. By the time kids reach the last few grades of high school, most of them have the legal acuity of a lawyer who has been trained in how to work around the rules and exploit the loopholes. Here's an example that I remember. A member of one of my former congregations was a teacher. And back when, cell phones first started to get cheap and kids started carrying them, probably about 15 years ago, I guess. She hung up a sign because a couple of her kids started bringing them to school that said, "No talking on your cell phones in class." Now, the few kids that had cell phones at that time knew what it meant, that they weren't supposed to use their cell phone during class time. And for several years, that rule was sufficient. But then as texting became more and more popular, and it seemed that every kid 12 years old and older had a cell phone in their pocket, she eventually had to replace the old sign with a new one that said, "All cell phones are to be turned off and kept out of sight during class time." Because several of the kids began to point to the sign and point out to the fact that they weren't talking on their cell phones, so they weren't breaking the rules because, they weren't talking on them. They were surfing the net and texting with them, but they weren't talking on them. You see, they were abiding by the letter of the law, but not by the spirit of the law. And now, as these kids become adults, many of them will learn that people will no longer overlook their infractions quite as quickly as they did when they were teenagers. And if there's one thing we can count on in this life, for you younger folks, as you get older, there will always be rules. And you must learn to deal with them, whether you like it or not. Now, it doesn't mean the rules aren't important. The rules are certainly there for a reason. But the point that Jesus is trying to make is that simply abiding by the letter of the law often is not enough. An ethical person not only understands and abides by the rules, they also appreciate the purpose and the reason behind the rules. Following the rules shows that you have respect for other people. Jesus says his people should not just obey the letter of the law, but they should also understand the reason for it and abide by the spirit of the law as well. You see, the Pharisees and the scribes that Jesus often refers to were exceptional in keeping the letter of the law. They were very legalistic. But then they often ignored the principle behind the law. That is why he makes the comment to them, "For I tell you that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven." Jesus will have several run-ins with the Pharisees on keeping the law and the ladder. And later he will often go off on a rant, describing their hypocrisy in detail. And we can see that by what he says. If we want to turn over to chapter 23, there's lots of examples. In fact, this section is called the 7 woes. Let me read just a couple of them for you so we can get a sense of why Jesus is so upset with the way the scribes and the Pharisees and the other religious leaders follow the law. Because he looks at them as an example to the bulk of his society. Here's a few examples. "Woe to you, Pharisees, and you other religious leaders, hypocrites! For you won't let others enter the kingdom of heaven, and won't go in yourselves. And you pretend to be holy with all your long public prayers in the streets, while you are evicting widows from their homes. Hypocrites." Verses 13 and 14. "Yes, woe to you, Pharisees, and you other religious leaders, hypocrites! For you tithe down to the last mint leaf in your garden, but ignore the more important things. Justice and mercy and faith. Yes, you should tithe, but you shouldn't leave the more important things undone. Blind guides. You string out a gnat and swallow a camel." Verses 23 and 24. You see, here, as in the text we just read, Jesus often turns to hyperbole or exaggeration to prove a point. If your right hand offends you, why, cut it off and throw it away. Jesus wants us to understand how important this is. As we can easily see, even from this small sample, Jesus did not only believe the rules were important, but the principles behind the rules were even more important. If all we do is obey the letter of the law without understanding the principle behind the law, then we're missing the point. The law points to something bigger. It points to the way that we should be living in community. And Jesus calls for his people to live with a deeper respect for the people around us and the spirit of the law than the legalism practiced by the Pharisees and the other religious leaders. That's why we as God's people must be sure that we understand that just because something is legal in our society does not necessarily mean that it's right. And there's a growing number of Americans who have suggested that there is a widening gap in this country between what is legal and what is illegal, and what is right and what is wrong. What Jesus does is to take the law and radicalize it. He says it's not merely just enough to abide by it, but we must also understand our motivation for abiding by it. If we approach the law with the right attitude, we will not be acting like a shrewd lawyer and immediately be trying to find all the loopholes. Instead, we will be trying to do our best to keep the law so that we might honor God and preserve our relationship with others. Let's look at the first of Jesus' statements. You have heard it said, to those of ancient times, you shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. Yes, this was one of the original 10 Commandments that Moses received from God. And in most every culture in the world, without exception, murder tops the list as one of the worst crimes one can commit. But Jesus takes this command a step further. He says, not just do not murder, but do not even be angry with your brother. Instead of just avoiding murder, be reconciled quickly so that you will preserve the sense of community and fellowship with one another. The second infraction Jesus mentions is, you have heard it said, do not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Lust is a very subtle sin. It dehumanizes people and turns them into merely an object that we use to give ourselves pleasure. Jesus warns his listeners not just to avoid adultery, but to avoid even the feelings and thoughts that might cause it to take place. Fidelity and faithfulness in marriage fosters trust. And the love you practice in your marriage will be an example to the whole community. The third infraction Jesus addresses is the complacent attitude that his society had toward divorce. The law stated that a man could simply give his wife a certificate of divorce. And that was that. This was the Jewish version, I guess, of a no-fault divorce. The Talmud specifically says that a man can divorce a woman because she spoiled his dinner, or simply because he finds another woman that is more attractive. And the woman's consent to the divorce is not required. Jesus, or just as in Jesus' day, divorce in our society has become much too easy, and most people are indifferent and fail to see the seriousness of it. But if we acknowledge that sacred bond that exists between a husband and a wife, if our hearts are focused on maintaining a healthy relationship, a loving relationship with our spouse, then divorce would only be an option that we would ever consider as an extreme last resort. The fourth statement Jesus makes concerns the making of vows, which break down into a lot of technicalities about when a vow must be kept. The implication of the argument is that when we're not uttering the right vow or the right oath, when we're not bound by the right oath, then the truth is optional. Kind of like us making a promise with our fingers crossed behind our back. As if that really makes a difference. Our word should be our bond. Here Jesus takes the law to its very foundation. We should not just be truthful under oath, or believe we are bound only by a certain oath and not by others. We should be truthful at all times. Being truthful simply shows our respect for others. Simply let your yes be your yes and your no be your no, Jesus says. And when lies and falsehoods are allowed, it will tear marriages apart and seriously damage many of our other relationships as well. It will also damage our congregational ties. As a church, we must expect the truth from fellow Christians. It's simply a matter of integrity. What Jesus is trying to establish with all of his words is that his followers are to be more than people who just refrain from infidelity or murdering or being truthful only when it's convenient or required. Christians should follow a higher standard. We should not just abide by the letter of the law, but by the spirit of the law as well. We all need to examine our motivation for keeping the rules, because our good works need to come from the heart, from clean hands, pure intentions. That means when we're driving down the road, we don't just drive 80 in a 65. We don't refrain from that just because we're scared of getting caught, but out of respect for the other people on the road. Jesus calls us to look inward, to examine ourselves and our motivations. We're not only to be accountable to God, but also to one another. It is there we will come to the root of what it means to live as a follower of Jesus Christ. The kingdom of God. Let's pray. Loving God, we thank you for your words which guide us. Even though we're probably not capable of abiding by all of them, you have made provision for our weaknesses. But Lord, give us the motivation to do our best and to try to keep your law, the spirit of the laws that you have set forth, so that we might be an example, so that we might represent you well